From a newly minted Department of War to an all-out fight against bureaucratic overreach, the Trump administration is fundamentally reshaping America's future, and we're diving into the sources to see how. Okay, so let's unpack this. Just days ago, September 5th, President Trump signed an executive order, and this one's big, renaming the Department of Defense.
To the Department of War.
Exactly, the Department of War. Now, this is more than just, symbolic, isn't it? It seems to be about instilling a warrior ethos.
Mm-hmm. A culture of aggressive readiness, decisive action. That seems to be the idea.
And signaling a really proactive stance on threats, both global and domestic.
Right. And part of this new approach, according to the sources, includes these pretty controversial claims.
Like the authority to summarily kill suspected drug smugglers.
Yes, in international waters. Specialists we looked at noted there's just no clear legal precedent for that. Raises huge questions about executive power.
Huge questions.
And this approach, it fits a pattern. It's quite consistent with the administration's broader strategy we see elsewhere.
Like in the economy.
Exactly. Across the economy, President Trump has been actively using emergency powers, specifically the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, i.e. EPA.
For those sweeping tariffs we've been hearing about.
Precisely. The stated goal is to bolster U.S. manufacturing, secure better trade deals, and the White House estimates, they project annual revenues between $600 and $700 billion from this.
Huge numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't been smooth sailing legally, has it?
Not at all. There have been challenges. A federal trade court recently struck down some of the big tariffs.
Okay.
But then, almost immediately, an appeals court put that ruling on hold. Temporarily.
So the fight continues.
Definitely. The administration is clearly prepared to battle for these policies. They're citing potential, quote, ruinous economic consequences if the tariffs are unwound.
And it doesn't stop at defense and trade. We're seeing major shifts in the fight against what the administration calls bureaucratic overreach.
Right, especially in public health.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's dismantled vaccine advisory panels, openly questioned CDC data.
Mm-hmm. Pushing for full transparency, he calls it, and an end to vaccine mandates.
Like Florida just did for school children.
Exactly. And it goes further even into universities, cultural institutions. They're in the crosshairs, too.
Freezing research funds at places like Harvard, challenging diversity initiatives.
It's a wide net.
So this deep dive, we're going to explore these, frankly, unprecedented moves. What do they mean for the country? We'll pull directly from the sources you've provided.
You'll hear the facts, the stated intentions, and crucially, the real-world impacts as we try to connect the dots.
Okay, let's start with that really striking development, renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War. What more do the sources tell us about the motivation here, beyond the symbol?
Well, the source material confirms the executive order was signed September 5th, 2025. It reverts to a name used for over 150 years, right up until after World War II.
A long history.
A very long history. And Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth sees this as central to spreading that warrior ethos within the Pentagon.
And what does that ethos mean in practice, according to him?
The stated aim, and this is a direct quote, is for maximum lethality, not tepid legality, violent effect, not politically correct.
Wow, okay. That signals a very clear intent, prioritizing decisive action.
Absolutely. Decisive action in military and security matters seems to be the priority.
And this aggressive posture, it's not just the name. It goes deep into border security, too.
Yeah.
You mentioned the IEPA being used there.
Yes, expensively. We saw it back in 2019. President Trump used IEPA powers then to put tariffs on imports from Mexico.
Tied directly to illegal immigration.
That was the stated reason, yes. And more recently, the Supreme Court gave the administration the green light to use racial profiling.
How is that defined?
Things like personal appearance, language spoken, even type of employment to check immigration status.
And the administration saw this as a win.
They hailed it as a victory for their mass deportation campaign. DHS even pledged to flood the zone.
But there were concerns raised.
Big concerns. Justice Sotomayor issued a warning. She said it could target, quote, anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and works a low-wage job. Really highlights the worry about discriminatory enforcement.
And beyond the legal rulings, we've seen actions on the ground. Federal agents surging into cities.
Yes, places like Boston and Chicago. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker called them political stunts.
And military troops in Los Angeles.
That happened too. But there have been legal pushbacks.
Tell me about those.
Well, On the judicial side, a federal appeals court just blocked the administration from using a really old law.
Which one?
The Alien Enemies Act from the 18th century. It lets the president deport citizens of an enemy nation in wartime. They tried to use it on Venezuelans.
Arguing an invasion?
Yes, but the court rejected that invasion argument specifically.
Interesting. What about the troops in L.A.?
A federal judge ruled that deployment thousands of troops for immigration protests actually violated federal law.
Which law?
The Posse Comitatus Act. It basically restricts using the military for domestic law enforcement.
So, legal setbacks, public criticism. How's the administration responding?
Well, despite all that, they've used things like AI-generated images in social media posts. One had the phrase, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning."
That sounds inflammatory.
It generated significant criticism, yes.
And you mentioned earlier that even more extreme claim about drug smugglers raised some eyebrows.
That's right. President Trump asserting the power to summarily kill suspected drug smugglers, treating them like wartime combatants in international waters.
And the legality of that.
Specialists say there's just no clear legal precedent.
Okay.
They liken it to murder under international law. So very serious legal and ethical questions are being raised there.
Okay, these bold assertions of executive power, they clearly extend to the economy too. You mentioned IEPA earlier. Can you explain a bit more about that act and how its use has changed?
Sure. IEPA, International Emergency Economic Powers Act. It was enacted back in 1977. It gives the president authority to declare a threat, national security, foreign policy, the economy.
And then they can do what?
Block transactions, freeze assets, things like that. But what's really notable now is how the Trump administration has broadened its application, specifically using it to impose tariffs.
Which is new.
It's a novel approach. It goes beyond how the act was historically used. It really marks a significant shift in how these emergency powers are being understood and applied.
Do we have specific examples of these recent tariffs?
We do. In 2025, several IEPA emergencies were declared. For Canada and Mexico, it was 25% tariffs on all imported goods.
The reason given.
A sustained influx of illicit opioids and other drugs, and also migrants.
And for China.
20% tariff on all their imported goods.
Right.
Same reason cited, sustained influx of illicit opioids and other drugs.
And then there was a broader one.
Yes, a worldwide additional 10% tariff on imported goods. This was based on the economic policies of U.S. trading partners. So a very broad reevaluation of global trade.
But these sweeping tariffs, they haven't gone unchallenged, right?
Yeah.
What's the latest legally?
Correct. Big challenges. On May 29th, a federal trade court actually struck down Trump's most sweeping tariffs.
On what grounds?
The ruling said the president exceeded his emergency powers under IEPA.
Okay, so that seemed decisive.
For about a day. The very next day, May 30th, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit put that ruling on hold. Temporarily.
Why? What was their reasoning?
They cited potential irreparable national security and economic harms if the tariffs were just immediately stopped.
So it's heading for a bigger fight.
It definitely sets the stage for a potential escalation, possibly all the way to the Supreme Court. It just highlights how legally contentious these policies are.
So we have this conflict. The administration says these tariffs will boost the economy. But we're also hearing about significant negative impacts. What did the sources actually show about the real-world effects versus the goals?
It's definitely a dual perspective in the sources. On one hand, critics project that these tariffs, the Liberation Day tariffs from April 2025, will inflict, quote, grave damage on the U.S. and world economies.
How so?
They estimate an enormous tax increase on Americans, something like $1,300 per household per year on average.
And have we seen immediate effects?
We've seen some, yes. The U.S. economy actually contracted by 0.2% in the first quarter of 2025. And ironically, imports went up initially as companies tried to get ahead of the tariffs.
What about specific companies?
John Deere reported a 29% drop in net income. They said they incurred $300 million in costs from metal tariffs, with another $300 million expected. That led to layoffs.
Ouch. Anyone else?
Best Buy shares fell 7.3%, attributed to the global trade war.
Okay, so those are some serious negative indicators. But what about the administration side? What are their stated goals?
Their goals are quite clear. Bolster the U.S. economy, boost the manufacturing base, and basically force other countries to negotiate more favorable trade deals.
And they claim investments are happening.
They point to claims of $15 trillion in investments resulting from tariffs. Though it's important to note, sources we looked at call many of these deals just frameworks at this stage, not finalized.
So it creates uncertainty.
Exactly. It illustrates what some call extreme whiplash for businesses and investors. The constant policy shifts undermine predictability, which can hinder long-term production and investment decisions.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Beyond defense and trade, public health is another major area of change, particularly with Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at HHS. What's the nature of the challenge he's posing there?
Well, RFK Jr. is definitely front and center. He's facing calls for resignation, largely due to what sources call his tumultuous leadership and his well-known anti-vaccine stance.
And this has brought his movement into the government itself.
Yes, it's brought his once niche grassroots movement to the highest level of America's public health system. He's openly rejected CDC stats on things like COVID-19 deaths and vaccine efficacy.
What's he claiming?
He claims mRNA vaccines cause serious harm, including death,
Which contradicts.
which directly contradicts findings from the CDC and the broad medical consensus. It's created a real divide within the public health world.
So it's not just policy disagreement, it's a direct challenge to the CDC's authority and science. How has he acted on this?
He's taken very direct action. He dismissed entire panels of vaccine experts. He fired the CDC director, Susan Monarez,
Why is she fired?
for refusing to comply with his anti-vaccine agenda, according to the sources. He accused CDC scientists of stonewalling.
How have former public health officials reacted?
Very strongly. Former CDC directors have publicly warned his actions are basically sabotage and are endangering every American's health. It underscores just how serious this conflict is perceived.
What about the states? How are they reacting to these federal shifts in health policy?
We're seeing a clear split. On September 5th, Florida moved to abolish all vaccine mandates.
What was their reasoning?
Their Surgeon General said the decision was based on right and wrong, not scientific projections. He actually said mandates drip with disdain and slavery.
Strong words, so a philosophical opposition.
Seems like it. But on the other side, you have Democratic-led states like California, Oregon, and Washington. They've formed a health alliance
To do what?
to provide their own science-based vaccine recommendations. They explicitly stated they felt the CDC could no longer be trusted.
Wow, that indicates a profound loss of confidence in a major federal agency.
Absolutely. A real fragmentation.
Okay, and this focus on challenging institutions, it extends to education and culture too. What are the sources saying about why universities are being targeted?
The sources highlight that the Trump administration has made attacking universities central to its agenda. They seem to view certain academic policies as out of step with their priorities.
How is this manifested?
One major way is freezing billions in federal research funds. The idea is to pressure schools to adopt preferred policies.
And the reasons for targeting have expanded.
Yes, the reasons have broadened, and it's not just focused on elite private universities anymore, though Harvard did win a court battle recently.
What happened there?
A federal judge blocked the administration from freezing billions in research funds meant for Harvard. The judge cited First Amendment rights, academic freedom. The argument was the government illegally froze funds in the name of stamping out anti-Semitism.
And this pushback includes diversity initiatives as well.
Yes, very prominently. George Mason University's first black president was directly targeted.
How so?
The administration demanded a public apology from him for his efforts supporting racial diversity. They accused him of violating the Civil Rights Act by discriminating against white academics in hiring and promotions.
So, a direct challenge to DEI efforts.
A very direct challenge. And it's not just universities. The Smithsonian Institution also pushed back.
What happened there?
They asserted their authority over our programming and content when the administration demanded a review of its exhibits. It points to a broader struggle over cultural narratives and who controls them, institutional autonomy.
Okay, finally, let's touch on fiscal policy and election integrity. What's the administration's approach to balancing the budget, especially with planned tax cuts and these new tariffs?
Well, context first. In 2024, the government spent $1.9 trillion more than it collected. Significant borrowing.
Okay.
The administration's strategy seems to be increase tariffs while also planning major tax cuts. The hope, or the bet, is that strong economic growth, spurred by those cuts and deregulation, plus efforts to cut government waste, will somehow offset the revenue loss from the tax cuts.
A big bet on growth, then.
It relies heavily on the idea that this combination of policies will expand the economy rapidly enough to cover the fiscal investments.
And what about the IRS? We heard about changes there.
That's right. The administration has dismantled IRS efforts to shut down aggressive tax shelters.
What does that mean?
They rolled back rules from the Biden era that were actually projected to raise over $100 billion in 10 years.
How is that being framed?
Well, from the administration's perspective, you could see it as reducing regulatory burden or correcting what they might view as IRS overreach. But critics, of course, argue it gives up significant revenue and could encourage more tax avoidance. It's definitely a move to redefine the IRS's role and priorities.
And lastly, election integrity. What's happening with voter rolls?
This is a really significant shift. The Justice Department is currently compiling the largest set of national voter roll data it has ever collected.
Why? What's the stated purpose?
To support efforts addressing what the administration calls unsubstantiated claims that droves of undocumented immigrants have voted illegally.
Is this normal?
It's a major break from decades of practice. Such comprehensive federal data collection for this specific purpose hasn't been common.
What are the concerns?
Experts have raised quite a few. Privacy is a big one. What happens with all this aggregated data? There's also concern about potential misuse for political purposes, like targeting certain groups for voter challenges without actual evidence of fraud. It definitely brings the federal government much deeper into state-level election administration than before.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener? We've really walked through an administration that seems determined to reshape America.
Fundamentally.
Across the board, national security, economic policy, public health, education, even how elections are overseen.
And the methods are often bold executive actions, direct challenges to established institutions, established norms.
Yeah, from the Department of War name change to the legal fights over tariffs, the push against vaccine mandates, it all seems to reflect a consistent strategy.
Asserting executive power, redefining national priorities.
The sheer scale of the change being pursued is quite striking. And that consistent thread of challenging existing norms, existing institutions, it's evident everywhere we looked in the sources. It certainly encourages you, the listener, to think critically. How is power being wielded? What impact do these fundamental shifts have on our daily lives?
And what's the right balance, you know, between decisive executive action, which some might see as necessary, and the institutional checks and balances that are designed to provide oversight?
A crucial question. As executive power expands and these judicial challenges mount, where is that ultimate balance point between decisive action and institutional oversight? And how will America collectively define that line in the years ahead?